Should I join a throuple?
We just call it sex. The differences between polyamory and throuplehood or triads or even swinging lifestyle, they're all very different.
There are problems with throuples for sure. As we discover in this episode of the Grand Spark Show, I interview Kam Berard, a dating coach of high-performance CEOs and athletes, but she also gives us an inside look into her own triad, her own throuple, and some of the challenges they face. But one of the biggest challenges throuples face is normalizing love in non-traditional forms. If you watched any of the Grand Spark Show, you know I'm all about high performance and helping people ignite lives of explosive significance. I think there's no more important realm than in dating and in love. And Kam shows us that there's a whole array of different ways to experience love that we probably weren't taught about from birth. Enjoy this episode of the Grand Spark Show with Kam Berard. Let me start here if I can.
Yeah.
Kam, if that's okay. Let me start with this question. Let me ask you, should I join a throuple? And if so, why or why not? Or when shouldn't I? Or when should I consider? Because you do so much consulting with your dating coaching, right?
Yes.
So consult me for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Should I join a throuple? Why or why not?
Well, the answer for you is going to be different probably than the answer for most people. And
Okay.
I would say for most people, no, you should not join a throuple.
Okay.
But that is mostly because throuples have to originate in a very organic way.
Okay.
It is a really hard thing to manufacture. So trying to just go out there and find one is not likely to go well because you're going to have to force it. And if not every single person is feeling the same level of feelings at the same time,
Yes.
you're going to have a lot more struggles than most people are going to want to deal with. And if you are not highly emotionally intelligent, a very effective communicator, an empathetic partner, and a very self-aware person who is capable of holding themselves accountable,
Yeah.
receiving when somebody else holds you accountable, it's not going to work. So
Refreshing to hear. Like, no pressure,
yeah.
we're not trying to force you into throuplehood.
No, not at all. Not at all. This is not for everyone. But when it is right,
Mm-hmm.
it is undeniable. And
Mm.
the thruples that you see on social media or that I've come across in my searches, or even the people that have reached out to me since they've been together, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, some of them.
Yes.
It's just like any other traditional relationship in the fact that it is closed with a lot of love. In fact, we'll get into this when we talk a little bit more about the differences between polyamory and throuplehood or triads or
Mhm.
even the swinging lifestyle. They're all very different, and there's a million shades of gray in between. But that's kind of the beauty of anything that falls into that like lifestyle, right? Is in almost a relationship anarchy sense, you can create a dynamic that works for you and your existing partners or the partners that you
Mm.
want to be in a relationship with. You get to
Mm.
create the rules. You're not letting society govern what you can and can't do within your relationship. You're
Mm.
simply saying, what as adults do we feel is right for us?
Mm.
Bring us joy and love and fulfillment to where we can all live our best lives.
Yeah. Well, and as soon as you start describing that, my brain starts hearing, well, that just sounds like a normal relationship, a normal committed relationship. Like it's got to happen organically. You can't force it. You got to be, emotionally mature, and it's, forgive me, but like, no shit, Sherlock, relationships take a lot. And
Exactly. They all take work.
they all take work. And so for those asking, will this work? Is this successful? They're probably revealing their own assumptions about their myopia on the elephant in the room, sex, right?
Yeah.
And the pleasure that they think they're seeking out of it. So it takes emotional maturity, my friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't looking for this relationship, this triad, these people. You were just dating at the time, correct?
I was just dating. I went through a whole journey in my dating experience. Post-divorce, I was lucky enough to fall into a wonderful, traditional, straight monogamous relationship that lasted about 9 months. It was fantastic, but it was not meant to last forever. And I honestly, I knew that going in, despite how wonderful it was, I knew it was not a forever thing.
Yeah.
And when that ended, I went back and I was like, okay, I need to take some time to just date,
Yeah.
figure out myself, because I sort of accidentally found that relationship too. And so I was intentionally just dating, not for the sake of jumping into another relationship, but getting to know new people, trying to venture outside of my typical types. I was committed to traveling abroad, and that allowed me to date abroad, which exposed me to a whole other realm
I've heard this.
of men and elevated my standards of what I expected in a partner.
Yeah.
And
Elevated your standards. Okay.
oh,
Because
for
sometimes
sure.
you date abroad and you're like, I met these Italian men and they were whatever, but I kind of liked it. And
Oh no, I did meet an Italian man, and he went above and beyond.
really?
Yes, I mean, that's a whole story in
Sure.
itself.
We'll save it for another time.
I do probably need to do a TikTok on that one because
Yes.
it sets the tone for like, look, here's the level of effort that
Oh,
is not necessarily extravagant. It kind of sounds extravagant and fairy tale in the story when I tell it,
sure.
but there was nothing about what he did that was, you know, that no other guy could reasonably do. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
anybody could have done the things that he did. He was just very intentional and romantic.
Yeah.
The Europeans are far more romantic. They kind of worship women over there,
Yes.
and they work hard to let those pursuits be known.
Mm.
And all the profiles over there, you would think that they were fake because they look amazing. They all look like supermodels. They're all well dressed. They're very stylish. They all speak 5 languages. They've all got reasonable careers, and you look at them and you're like, that guy's not real.
Yeah.
You meet a few of them, and you're like, holy crap, they're all real.
They're all real and they're not all models. They're just people.
They're just
And
people, but they take care of
they
themselves.
took care of this. So Johnza from Twitch poses this question real quick from this microcosm of a dating moment you had. I'm curious what your standards were and how in which standards changed. You came back, you raised the bar. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, my standards have always been relatively high. I wanted a kind, intelligent, sensitive person that would, provide a balance to my feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully remove me from any sort of masculine energy that I had to live in post divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from a very successful career background, that posed its own challenges. Men were often intimidated by that, so finding a man that could come up to that level and not be intimidated but embrace it, and also lift me up
Mm-hmm.
and not be threatened by it, that was kind of a key standard.
Mm-hmm.
But what changed when I started dating abroad was really just kind of the effort that several of these men would go through just for first dates, let alone
Yes.
follow-up dates, and then continuing to stay in contact with me even after I was no longer in the country. Like, I'm friends with all of them still, and they really set the bar of like, oh, you know what? Everything that I grew up watching in movies and rom-coms or reading in my books, I'm an avid reader,
Mm.
and it is possible to do 90% of that. And men, I feel like men would understand women and what women want so much more if they just read the books that women read, particularly the ones written by women. Like,
Yeah.
it's a how-to guide right there for you.
Yes.
So, and it's not hard. It's not about how much money you make. It's
Yeah.
not about how tall you are. It's not about how elaborate the dates are.
Yeah.
It's about intention and authenticity
Yeah.
and an effort to get to know the woman. When I was on dates in Europe, those men asked some of the best questions, and they spent the whole time like feeding off of it. you know?
Yes,
Not like they didn't share anything about themselves because I was
certainly.
asking them questions in kind, but, men in America, or at least men in Texas, really struggle. They have this, the woman's gotta earn them and not the other way around. And
Interesting.
that kind of behavior is so unbelievably unattractive
Yeah.
that I had 0 interest in it,
Mm.
particularly after being shown by these European men what that effort really looks like.
Yes.
And so I stopped tolerating any sort of half-assed efforts.
Yeah.
Can I cuss?
And
Sorry.
no, no, what'd you say? Can I cuss?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I already dropped the F-bomb. And
okay.
I think that's helpful, and I have noticed in the US, there's a parallel that's striking me from a spiritual perspective. We have this phrase in development work called the missing middle in America. And it's this idea that if you travel, especially to developing or underdeveloped countries, there's still a very strong, pervasive spiritual layer. And, there's the people, there's the divine, and then there's the intermediaries, the spiritualists or the voodoo shamans, or, people that I've interacted with from Haiti to Kenya. And in America, I don't know if it correlates with Protestantism or what, but you remove this middle layer. And sociologically, we don't observe this stuff often, but I think we both said we're partly sapiosexual, so we can talk a little intellectually. This middle layer gets removed in the West, or in the United States especially, where we're not paying attention to the subtle nuances of energy. I know there's a lot of talk about like manifestation and masculine and feminine energies, but it feels so token here as opposed to a felt thing. And when you describe these European men asking questions almost to hear you emote, and kind of, for lack of a better term, whether it's the meal we're having or the wine or the way you elucidate on an idea, they're drinking it in. And it
Oh,
like, you know what I'm saying? And like
yeah,
even
no, well, it's
like,
it's ingrained in their culture,
yes.
loving women and raising women up is part of their culture, particularly in Italian culture, and I'm
Yeah.
Italian, so I can sort
Yeah.
of speak to that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it is part of their culture, just like food is a part of their culture, and
Mm,
wine, and art, and history, and architecture. It's
mm,
all a part of that culture that is very rich and embraced over in Europe, because culture also equals community there, and we get
yes.
removed in the US in particular. We have
Mhm.
spread out so much that our communities no longer have those third spaces, right? We have
Yes.
home and we have work.
Yeah.
And there's very few third spaces for us to come together as a community to share in culture. And what
Except for
culture
church. I
we
mean, church is the
Yeah.
last bastion, but it's kind of growing rudimentary at this point. And you're right. Aside from that, I agree with that. Now, were you doing the dating coaching when you were on this venture?
No, no, not yet. I was still working in the corporate world.
Okay. And so let's talk about dating real quick, because I want to come back to some of the nuances of throuplehood, which is the promise of why we're here. But we can't engage that until we hear some of this rich experience you've had with your dating coaching. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I've been kind of, as I've been building people up to some of this event, I've been telling people you are a dating coach for high performers. Am I articulating that correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And so how do you define a high performer first? And then let's talk about their dating, the kind of the observations at writ large about no one
Observations.
specifically, but how do you describe a high performer in this dating coaching?
Um, Honestly, it's somebody who has spent most of their life prioritizing their professional career and either has let relationships kind of fall apart. They might be recently divorced or long time divorced and never had time to go back to the dating realm, or eh, they just never did it to begin with. And so
Mm,
now that they've gotten established in their career and they want to have a family, or they need to put a focus on the personal side of their life for a change,
mhm.
they don't really know where to begin because dating has evolved so much in the last decade, let alone the last 20 years. So some of these older high-powered executives, for example, have been married for 20 plus years, and then they get divorced and they have no clue where to begin, how to talk to women nowadays, how to approach them, how to even work the apps, let alone use them to their advantage.
Yes.
So a lot of what I do, particularly in those environments, is
Mhm.
it's a very it's a very niche thing to the individual. So
Yeah.
I've had clients that need totally different things and have totally different goals. Not everybody's
Mm.
looking for marriage, and to your point, yes, some of them are looking for that non-traditional way into having fun again in life because they've spent so much
Yes.
of their life focused on their careers
Mm.
that they didn't ever get to let loose. Or maybe they got married at a really young age and they've raised families, and they look at their partner one day and they're like, we're very, very different people at this point. We want
Yeah.
very different things. We've grown apart. And so either they've gotten divorced or they want to learn how they can evolve together into something
Yes.
more fulfilling for both of them.
Yeah.
And that might possibly mean exploring something non-traditional.
Yeah. So for the research for this after we talked, I got on all the apps.
Oh, did you?
I did, and I haven't done this in ever, right? Like, and I started with like the softcore Bumble, of course, and that's totally softcore. Then I took the whole gamut to like OnlyFans, just because it's like, wait, there's all these taboos, and I just haven't visited these corners of the internet in a long time. But the Field app and all of these different things, and I was shocked at the percentage of couples that were in this stage of life that you're talking about. Some of the comments on Facebook were someone commented and said, these types of relationships are set up to fail and won't succeed. Then another friend of mine who had been a pastor, he even wrote Christian books. He's left the church. He's now a therapist. Church trauma is what he specializes in.
Oh, okay.
He jumped in and posed a question as it comes to your observations from your dating coaching, but also your very own throuple. How should we be measuring success in a relationship when the divorce rate's already over 50% anyways? Which statistically, it's like, wait, it's not that something's wrong. The model is broken, right? So whether it's your dating coaching or whether it's you and your partners, what is the measure of success in these dating relationships?
The value that everybody is receiving while they're in it. You know,
Wow, that's a healthy. Hold on, I gotta write that down. Keep going, keep going. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, I post divorce, I had to really come to terms with the fact and really let go of my traditional views of marriage because I held it very dear as a lifelong commitment. You are in it for the long haul, no matter what happens. You need to find a way to evolve together
Yeah.
because that was the commitment you made.
Mhm.
And when posed with having to go through my divorce and not having a partner that wanted to do that with me to grow to try to save it,
Yeah.
it really challenged me to then, instead of having to look at my entire marriage, 11 years plus a couple more that we were together, instead of having to look at it as a total loss,
Yeah.
I had to do a mindset shift and say, all right, well, I got my son out of it. I have 11 years of wonderful memories. I had all of these opportunities during that time, and it's brought me to a new stage of growth and put me on this path. So I had to find value in it, even though I was really grieving the loss of it and grieving the loss of the idea of it mostly, right?
Yes. Yes, that is a fantastic point.
So when I started, going down this path of dating again, and I had that wonderful relationship that I told you I knew from the start didn't feel like it was going to be able to last forever, but it was also absolutely the relationship that I needed post divorce. There
Mm,
was so much value in that relationship in teaching me how to love again, teaching me I could be loved, and in a different way that I could be loved.
yes.
And that was so incredibly valuable, and the fact that it didn't last forever or lead to marriage or even make it past a first year does not reduce the value that it had on my life or
Yes.
my mind shift, my mentality, my well-being. my confidence, so many things. It had so much value.
Mm,
And so from that point forward, I was like, time is our most valuable thing on this planet.
yes.
We never know how much time we're going to get. And I have to look at anything that I spend my time in. I have to look at it as a value, whether that's a challenge I have to go through and it's a valuable lesson I need to learn,
Wow.
whether it's a wonderful experience that was beautiful and perfect, but fleeting, these
Hmm.
little satellite relationships that I had when I was dating abroad that I knew that they were isolated moments in time. I was not going to be in a long-term relationship with someone halfway across the world.
Yeah,
Despite my desire to probably live abroad at some point, I'm not going to do that while my son is still in school.
sure.
And so I knew that those weren't ever going to last, but I got to enjoy those relationships, those connections to the absolute fullest and have these little nuggets of
Nuggies.
love. And it was really a whirlwind love that when I could see it for the value that it could provide for however long it was mine to hold,
Yes.
it just filled all my buckets. It
That's
really, really
wild.
did.
Well, in it's expanding and expansive. The thought experiment, since we've talked, and I've been thinking these thoughts for a little while now, of I just love entertaining something that had previously been a taboo to me. So I entertain it in the thought experiments and just thinking about it, and then seeing this one person's comment, "What is success?" These set themselves up to fail, and so then I ask myself, "What is the measure of success that you're talking about?" And I want them just to articulate it. And what they're saying is we suffered each other until we died. And if they would just say that that's what their measure of I suffered the highs, yes, the highs, but
What a
the
martyr.
freaking lows, and then the gaps of no love that go on in a lifetime from one individual because they're not loving themselves or they're on a quest of their own. And it's like, so what you're saying is we you think the measure of success is going the distance, dying together within the nearby zip code. But what you're saying is more people can't make that a more pleasurable experience. And when people have to just when you make them articulate it back to you, it starts to sound really silly on the ears that we have this default assumption. So let me ask you this: as a dating coach of high performers, do they have a different rubric of average performers, of the average person, a different outlook, or is it the same, do you feel, in terms of what they're looking for in maybe a new dating relationship? Is the high performer different from the average performer? Just curious.
They are more on their approach, not so much maybe their goals, because their goals are going to vary just like any other individual, but
Mm,
their approach is different. These are people that have already invested in bettering themselves continuously throughout their career. They
mm,
have learned the value of a methodical, strategic approach to just about everything in their life, but maybe they haven't been able to do it on the professional side yet
mm,
because they've either been focused elsewhere or they've had a relationship that they maybe weren't focusing on anymore. And so they need help saying, okay, I'm going to take the same strategy that I put into my professional career and I'm going to apply it to my personal life. And so they are in many ways better clients because they know the value of doing the work. They know the
mm.
value of being kind of told what to do, what they need to do, and they do their homework. They do their homework. Like therapy, coaching, it's only so good as the person is willing to do the work on themselves.
Yes.
I can't guarantee somebody love. I'm not trying to do that. That it's fate is going to allow for that. But what I can do is guarantee that I can give you the tools to have a better time. And I can give you
Mm,
the tools to make smarter decisions. And I can give you the tools to make sure that you are enjoying the process, enjoying being single on your way to finding whatever that true connection is that you are looking for, whatever your relationship goals are, whether you are in a relationship or not. And lately, I've had a lot of people that are actually in existing relationships that are trying to get into a more non-traditional arrangement because they have reached that point in their marriage where they've been married 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
Everything is great and wonderful, but maybe now they're empty nesters and they're like, we kind of want to just let loose and like eh, we want to have fun and we're secure enough in our relationship.
Yes.
Nothing's broken here. We don't need to fix anything. We just
Mm.
there's new things that we've already experienced so much together and we're
Yeah.
sort of running out of other things to experience together. So we want to try to grow in this capacity because we both think it will benefit us, not only
Yes.
as a couple but as individuals in terms of their individual fulfillment, and even adding that new and exciting layer to their relationship again to
Yeah.
experience that kind of growth together. And that's what I always
Mm.
found to be so beautiful when I first started talking to couples that had different non-traditional dynamics set up, was how evident their love for each other was, how evident the respect
Yes.
was, how open and honest the communication was. They were very transparent. There were very clear boundaries and comfort levels. And, you know,
Mm.
it's just so healthy when you really see it on display. And that's what I want people to understand is that this is not a free for all
Yes.
on just the sexual side of things. Most people don't do it for that. They do it
Yes.
to challenge themselves, to challenge their relationship at that next level, to say, are we strong enough to handle the communication that this is going to take,
I
the
love this.
respect and mutual openness and vulnerability that this is going to take? Are we capable of having compersion within our relationship to see each
Mhm.
other happy and being fulfilled by other people in a way that maybe we can't fulfill for each other?
Mm. Could you, for the record, define compersion? Because for
Oh.
most people, this is a new word and it should be in monogamous relationships too. But what is compersion?
So, compersion, simply put, is just experiencing joy at witnessing someone else's joy,
Yes.
particularly if you are not benefiting from that joy
Yes.
and if you are not the reason for that joy. So a lot of people
Yes.
might want to see somebody happy, but only if you're the reason that they're happy, right? And that's where that kind of ownership, that possessiveness comes in like, no, I want to be responsible for your happiness.
Yes.
If
I
it's when you can
oh,
let go and let somebody else offer that fulfillment that maybe you can't provide, and you experience joy at that for the person that you love, it is the most beautiful form of love that anybody can hope to achieve.
well, and again, this thought experiment in my brain, it was experiencing this for the first time. And then reflecting, like experiencing, like, can I envision my primary partner, Marissa? Can I envision her deriving full joy without me, not because of me, and not for me, and love her? And when I had that moment, and she's done long hikes on her own. She bought a property in North Carolina. She set it up on her own. She changed her entire career and did this. And I have respect for her, but I have these feelings. And it wasn't until these thought experiments and hearing the definition, I encountered the word compersion, I want to say about 9 months ago for the first time. And I thought, I have never sought to do this. So, how tainted has my love been with my own ego?
Yeah.
And you cannot have this. Now, I'm sure people with kids begin to have this, right?
Yeah.
And so it's thrust upon them. But how tragic that even monogamous couples usually don't encounter what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
limits put on it in those
yeah.
that's right. So you can simply support compersion by allowing partners to do other things without you that, bring them joy, but maybe you don't have an interest in, right? Like a
Mhm.
particular hobby or hanging out with a friend group or traveling with different people. If you can facilitate that kind of fulfillment outside of yourself,
Yes.
and to me it comes down to that that most common saying of like, if you love something, set it free, right? Like that is
Mhm.
the biggest way that you can love something is to give
Mhm.
it complete freedom.
Mhm.
And also, you look at how Buddhists approach love, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everything, it's to give. It's to
Mm-hmm.
give freedom and let love take center stage.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I've always loved that. And I didn't fully understand it until I had to come to the realization that,
Mm.
one person, it's not fair for one person to be expected to be 100% of what you might need 100% of the time
Yeah.
over time,
Yeah.
right? It may last that way for a year, for 10 years, for 20 years. And then one day you wake up and you're like,
Yeah.
I know there's probably more out there, but I guess this is what I need to live with in order for this to be defined as successful. I'm just going to live the rest of my life this way.
Yeah.
And if we all just loved each other enough to say, no, how can I make you even happier? I
Mm-hmm.
love you so much. I want to
Mm-hmm.
see you at your happiest always,
Yes.
regardless of whether or not I am the reason for that.
Yes. That's huge. And you alluded to this, and I think it's time for us to circle back to now. What do most people believe we're talking about when we're saying thruples or triad or whatever the right term is, versus what people generically understand as poly or swingers? What is the major difference here?
Yeah, well, I would say there are major differences between those three,
Okay.
between swingers, polyamorous, the polyamorous community, and thruples that exist like we do as a closed triad, meaning we are monogamous with each other. We don't invite other people into our relationship. We are not physical with any others. We don't have any outside relationships beyond our own. But we are still polyamorous in the sense that all of us clearly love more than one person at a time because there are three of us. So,
Mm.
yeah, most people do when they see a non traditional dynamic like us out in the wild, they immediately think it's a sex thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here we
Oh,
go. Here we
no.
go. This is direct from Twitch. Mark stars and who? When I
Yeah,
hear thruple, I hear threesomes. Let's go.
yeah, yeah. We just call it sex.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's paradigmatically hilarious. You can call it threesomes. We just call it sex. That's pretty funny.
I'll make up the t shirt.
Yeah, man. So okay, and you can tell me to take a hike on this. Did your relationship with your partners right now, did it start dating, sexual, or love? How did it start, and what did it become?
It started with the intent of just sexual, yes, because
Okay.
it started with the intent of I was dating men only,
Mhm.
and I had been about a year removed from any experiences with joining couples as a unicorn, which I had stumbled into that kind of the year before in my, rage swiping left, and I had gone through everybody on Bumble,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Bumble was like, "Fine, you don't like any of these people. How about a couple?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "What is this? I
Yeah.
don't understand." And what we talked about before, I reached out and I said, "You know what? I I don't think this is for me. I don't know that I'm at all interested,
Mm,
but I am incredibly curious. I'm a very, very curious person,
me too.
and I wanted to understand how it worked, why it worked, and what brought them to navigate that kind of dynamic for themselves." And then, the algorithms, once you swipe right on one, it's like, oh, here's a whole bunch more.
I
Uh,
assume you want more couples, and it's like,
yeah.
yes.
But then I got to see kind of the range. Everybody had a different dynamic set up. They all had different boundaries. Some of them dated
Interesting.
independently from each other.
Mhm.
Others dated together. Some were looking for that unicorn. Others were looking for a true girlfriend, or maybe just the woman was looking for a girlfriend, and the guy was
Mhm.
just kind of there, like, yeah, sure, honey, you can.
Sounds hot. Yeah.
If I get to partake, that's cool. So I kept starting conversations, and I was very upfront with everybody from the beginning. Like, "Yeah, I don't know if this is for me, but if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you some questions." And so that began my research, and eventually I did end up meeting a couple, and we hit it off, and the vibe was good, and I had my first like true experience in that fashion. And they were all very positive experiences from that point forward.
Wow.
I loved the communication, I loved the boundaries, I loved knowing I wasn't worried about putting a foot wrong anywhere or crossing any lines
Mm,
because we talked about it in advance and everything was
yes.
very laid out and we didn't have to go into an awkward situation fumbling around like, oh, is this okay? I don't want to look here. I don't want to,
Yeah, yeah.
so it was fantastic. And then the more I saw these couples, the more I saw their love on display and just how
Yes.
how strong they really were
Yeah.
and what it had done for their relationship and how long they had found success doing it in their own way, right?
Mm,
And so that sent me on my dating journey of, I'd like to find a man that I could potentially have this type of relationship where we are, exclusive with each other or we have a primary relationship with each other, maybe a
mhm.
nesting partnership.
Yeah.
And maybe I date, or maybe we date together, maybe he dates, and we define whatever boundaries were going to work for us.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of what I was on the hunt for, not necessarily needing that, but
Mm,
wanting to know that it would be a possibility if we ever got to a point where neither of us was enough for each other, you
yeah.
know?
Wow.
And so after a year very focused dating on that, I came back to field because I was
Yes.
kind of emotionally exhausted and didn't want the pressure of needing to manifest feelings for somebody because for
Yep.
whatever reason it just wasn't coming. I was meeting great people. I was having wonderful dates. I felt very strongly about my process and loving my singlehood. But I was not able to really emotionally connect with someone in the way that I was wanting to. And so I kind of wanted to take a break from it and I went back to field and that's where I found my current couple and I was like, oh, I don't normally date younger, but I'm not dating them. This is just for fun. So
Yeah.
why
Funsies.
not? And they had a really impressive profile that had it been just one person, I would have absolutely wanted to date them because their profile spoke to everything that speak to my clients about, in
Can you give
terms
me
of,
some examples and highlights?
oh well, for starters, it was long. It was a lot of text. And I love that because I want to know that you are thinking individuals that are not just here for sex. And they also had qualifiers at the very bottom. It said, so if you've made it this far, message us with your latest book read or the last place you traveled.
What? Okay.
And they did not talk with anyone unless they actually followed that prompt. So if people matched with them,
Wow.
if they didn't follow the instructions, they're like, nope, sorry, you clearly didn't read any of our profile. So no
Wow.
thanks. And I think that is so important. And so it told me a lot about them. I was like, okay, and they're obviously stunning.
Yeah, they're good lookers, and I had to call this out because and I will call this out. I listened to the last episode of your podcast, and I didn't catch his name.
Will.
Will. Will calls out, "Is this white privilege that we don't get more trolls, more hate, or is it pretty privilege?" And I was like, "Oh, no." He's got no problem calling it out. But it is. They're both I mean, all three of you are stunning people, and of course, you're scrolling through Field. Um, you don't always get that option and intelligence at the same
Right? It's hard to find. They are on there,
Mhm,
and there are high-powered net worth individuals, very
mhm.
successful individuals on there.
Yes.
A lot of times they will go through pretty extensive efforts to their profiles and only reveal themselves once you've matched and had conversations and
Mhm,
so forth. They are on there.
mhm.
Honestly, a shocking amount are. But yeah, so they definitely stood out for
Mhm.
me and we had good chatting chemistry right away. The conversation flowed very easily and then that led to our first date and once again I was enamored with the way that they loved each other and it was beautiful the way that they spoke about each other and the way that they engaged with me and were curious about me. It wasn't just about them and I'm here for fun. No, they were very curious about me and
You felt they were both dating you,
yes,
or like these Italian men in Europe, they're
absolutely.
both asking questions and deriving pleasure and joy from hearing, your intellect, hearing your history, they weren't just looking for a play partner in the moment per se.
Exactly.
Or maybe they
Exactly.
were, but how
I mean,
they
that was
engaged
the
with us more
intent,
enriching.
but
Yeah.
yeah, they still had their standards for even that.
Mhm.
And that
That's
also
so good.
spoke volumes to me, right? Just because 'cause you're willing to do, some fun stuff
Mm,
outside of, the traditional setup
mhm.
doesn't mean you don't have standards about how that is
Yes.
done or the type of people that you wanna bring into your bedroom.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
so that was very important. But yeah, they did. They made very concerted efforts to date me, and it was very much like the men in Europe where they were going out of their way. I'm a divorced mom, I have my son the majority of the time. My adult nights that I get totally free were incredibly limited, and so my
Mhm.
schedule was, usually I was having to plan dates several weeks in advance,
Weeks,
a
yeah.
month in advance, and I might get to go on a date and then, okay, then my next availability is gonna be in 3 weeks from now, and so
Wow.
that's hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard particularly at the beginning stages of dating if you don't have that sort of availability, so finding people that were patient enough to go through that course with me also, again, spoke volumes to me, and
Yeah.
they went out of their way to make themselves available whenever I had last minute availability and or just I also found that I was making time for them.
Mm.
But then they'd show up and they'd have flowers and they
What? As a
they'd
couple?
be like wearing the same thing almost. It would be bizarre. Yeah, no, they absolutely started courting me, and I was like, wait a minute, this feels like dates, not just trying to get me into bed.
I was literally gonna ask, so you had your first date and it was a playful vibe, but you were learning there was more substance, and it might have just been a play date of sorts, but then there was follow-on dates, and they were showing a degree of seriousness or intentionality
Yeah.
that made them more three-dimensional, and did you right away vibe and try to push the vibe away?
To a degree, yes, yes.
Interesting.
Oh, I told them on the first date that I knew that they were trouble. So, I
Messing up my
mean,
plans.
your your title, I was like, "Yeah, no, it's definitely trouble," because I was like, "What am I gonna do if I actually like them?" And, yeah, they knew, obviously, that I was continuing to date and that I was, at the time, looking for a primary partner
Yeah.
and, that I identified as solo poly at the time. And they had other women, not many, but like there were other women that they had still been talking to. And as we started to spend more and more time together,
Yeah.
and particularly after we got physical for the first time, which was not on the first date, by the way,
Yeah.
then we all started to realize that instead of me wanting to be on these dates with other people,
Yeah.
I would leave the dates and want to talk to them and want to
And
be
it's
around them.
literally the them. There
Tell them
wasn't one or the other that you were gravitating towards most. It was
no.
literally the vibe of the unit.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so organic. It sounds so organic that way, like we were saying in the beginning. Like
Yes,
it
and it's honestly the only way I think it can work is, yeah, it was bizarre to us. It felt like we had won the lottery. We were consistently trying to define how it could be possible for three people to simultaneously, I was falling in love with Paige, which was I had never felt an emotional connection to women before like that. I was
same.
falling in love with Will on his own, right? And then I was falling in love with them as a couple. And then
Wow.
they obviously already had a lot of love for each other, but then they both fell in love with me at the same time and are having these conversations, you
Yeah.
know, on their own. And one day I had a date and they were just like, I think I'm feeling kind of jealous. And then Will was like, yeah, I'm feeling jealous too. What does this mean? What should we do about this?
Oh, wow.
And that's when I started really realizing that I wasn't enjoying dating other people anymore. I
Wow.
didn't want to be spending my valuable time with others when I wasn't having that emotional connection there. And it was anytime I heard from them or got a message from them, or we did voice messages a lot.
You'd get that thrill?
I'd get the thrill, I'd get the butterflies, but
Ah, you're in love.
it wasn't that like toxic, like love bombing type
Sure.
of energy.
Yeah.
It was so peaceful. I had such a
Wow.
sense of peace in my interactions with them. My nervous system was calm with them. I felt
Mm,
safe and secure,
yes.
and like I could be my most vulnerable, authentic self. I
Yes.
never once had to really explain myself to them for anything. They
Mm.
intuitively knew or asked more or just knew how to support in moments where I would withdraw because I was like, this can't be what
Happening.
yeah, I was like, this can't actually be real, right? This isn't a legitimate option. But yeah, so I pushed back on it for a long time
Mm,
until it felt like I was lying to myself, to the world, to
mm.
deny how I really felt
Wow.
and what we really had. And we all wanted to go all in. And
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that in several years of dating, I had only introduced my friends to one other person, I had only introduced my son to one other person,
Yeah.
all of that time, and I immediately
Yeah.
introduced them to my friend network,
Yeah.
and, pretty early on, wanted to introduce them to my son. I was excited to, and that was bizarre for me because I was like, I wanna do this, but this is like the weirdest thing to try to introduce to my son, right? Trying
Yes.
to navigate that was, whew, it was threw me for a loop.
Yeah. My key indicator on is this a true and pure love? My new rubric was something I experienced with my partner Marissa. And it was this matter of factness that, we carry so many assumptions, so many taboos, and those are socially driven. So these societal expectations of what is, what isn't. We carry all of these. And when love shows up, it's all of that be damned. This is just going to happen. And
Mhm.
it's less fireworks and more just matter of fact.
Yeah,
It's matter of fact, and like you're describing, I'm gonna introduce the couple to my friend network. Why? They should know them. It's just matter of fact.
yeah.
They're good people. They're humans. They're my partners. They check all these boxes, and like the safety level, the sense of security and stability. That I don't know how long you're going to be here, but you should know everyone, and that matter of factness is certain. And I've only had that the one time, and then again, and then that's what really got me to realize I think my heteronormative nature is about to get annihilated. And to that point, I just want to cover a few of these comments real quick.
Yeah.
Our friend from Twitch, he's commenting or he's commenting on your experiences in Europe, and I assume Johnza then has experience in Europe themselves. The observations and trends she's noticing are totally true. This is my primary partner, Marissa. Yes, I didn't know there was a word for this, compersion. So I'm super touched that she's seen that and has that. This was a different Twitcher. When I hear couple, we hear threesome, we heard this. Now, this is my buddy Thomas that I was referring to, who was a pastor and is now in therapy, does therapy work. Compersion is uniquely intimate experiences of polyamorous couples. And I think once the word compersion gets out there, my hope is that people who don't think poly is for them still experience the purity of compersion
Conversion.
in a monogamous relationship. He does say he loves that there's an increased pushback against mononormativity. And maybe heteronormative rolls off my tongue a little bit better. But lastly, he asks a question, if you don't mind. Cam,
Yes.
how did you navigate couples privilege and or relationship hierarchy when building a relationship with this couple? And I guess this assumes you did experience this. Did you experience this or not?
Yes and no. No, because they worked very, very hard to dismantle their couple's privilege.
Interesting.
Because it meant the world to them when we decided to go all in on this. It meant the world to them that I knew that it was equal footing, that
Wow.
there is no longer Will and Paige. It is only Will, Paige, and Cam.
Was
And
this a discussion?
oh yeah, I mean it came up. They had decided it.
They had
um,
already decided it.
they had already decided it, had their own
Wow.
discussions about this, and wanted to go all in, and they have said to me repeatedly from early on too, in knowing that they made it very clear they wanted me in their lives for the rest of their lives. And they're
Both
like, "We
of
can
them
share what it takes." Oh, yeah.
independently. Oh, that I mean, I have to assume that's going on, but just hearing you say it just rocks me. Keep going.
So they wanted to do anything to make me understand that, because I had my heteronormativity was, giving me
Paige is
all
gonna be
sorts of
jealous, you
yeah,
know?
or just even like, I don't ever wanna be seen as this woman that came in between a beautiful marriage. That was
Mm,
so important to me. I did not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
yeah.
It was
Mm. Breaking
that
up
was so
marriages.
hard to break
Yeah.
that down
Mm.
and to not feel like I was intruding on their relationship, but no, this is a new relationship. This is our relationship.
Mm.
And if we need to get divorced so that you can actually marry one of us, we don't care which one. Heck, we'll take turns being married at different times in our lives if you want. And I was like, I mean, you don't have to. That seems like maybe a little overboard for me. I've
Excessive.
been married before. I wasn't even sure, honestly, that I wanted to get married again,
Yeah.
particularly because of the legality and the intertwining and all the mess that it can actually be when it doesn't work
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
So, I never really needed the legal side of marriage, whether I was going to be in a traditional relationship or this one. But the fact that they offered that really showed, and I didn't ask for it. They brought it up again multiple times of their own accord
Wow.
to just really make sure that I knew I was an equal part in everything moving forward, and that they didn't want to do things just the two of them. Like, of course, yes, we do prioritize all of us getting one-on-one time with each other
Yes.
within the dynamic, but they didn't want to be seen as just Will and Paige anymore.
Wow.
And they made it very clear to everyone in their family and their friend group that, like, when it comes to weddings or parties or work invites or holidays, it's Will, Paige, and Cam. And if you're not good with that, we won't come. And fortunately, everybody's loved us enough that we haven't had to deal with that. And, if there are times when a work event was like a charity dinner and you had to buy tickets, right? We're like,
Yeah.
we gladly buy another ticket.
Yeah.
We're not expecting a free ride for an extra person.
Can my
Um,
kids eat free? Can Paige eat free?
right? We each got two guests. So, but yeah, that has not been a huge issue.
Good.
Now, what I had struggled with more is just, and I did a video on this recently on my TikTok.
Mhm.
Uh, it not so much the couple's privilege, but when it comes to couple's privilege, it is the onus is very much on the couples to understand what it means and how their couple's privilege will be perceived and
Mm.
how they're going to navigate that and try to dismantle their de facto mode. They've, for the last 8-10 years that they've been together, it's been those two making the decisions, right? And now they have to be like, no, it's the three of us making decisions. And
Yeah.
uh, they have just done a beautiful job of that on their own.
Yeah.
I rarely ever have to call anything out. What I struggle with and have struggled with from the get-go is just feeling like I missed out on the early stages of that relationship,
Of
right?
that
So they
relationship.
have that history together and I'm still just getting to know them. So how can I hope to catch up, or feel equal or not miss out on these memories that they already have together? And they experience the same thing with me and my son. So if I talk about, when my son was younger or show them pictures when he was a baby, like, of course, they want to see all that. They want to be involved in that, but it also kind of twinges at them because they're like, they get a little upset that they weren't there for those years, that they didn't get the opportunity to be the ones to raise him with me.
Yes. That
And
is
so
so
it goes both
bizarre.
ways.
It's bizarre, but I know exactly what you're talking about because, the 2 times I mentioned that, I realized I have felt this matter of fact love, which to me is like that indicator. Both times, even though mine were individual moments, it wasn't a couple, obviously. You start backtracking like, how did I pick up this book on chapter 5? What happened in chapter 1, 2, and 3, and 4? And that's just this craving, this soul craving, I guess, to know and be known through the eyes or through the energy of that person. Jared asks this: how do you manage children that's not, or is that not part of this path? Obviously, your son is involved in this path quite a bit, but this is the touchier point for a parent. How old is your son, if I may ask?
He's
When you
11.
He's 11. And how old was he when you introduced Paige and Will to him? Okay, so not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
How is he navigating this world? What is the language? What are the terms he uses? How does this look?
From the time that he was a baby, I talked to him like an adult. And I never changed my vocabulary for him. I tried to teach him. It's how I was brought up, and I think it's why so many people will say that I'm a very formal speaker. Like, yes, I use punctuation.
That's funny. Okay, so you've equipped him.
Yeah, I sat him down after we had introduced them as just kind of my friends, and we went and hung out together
Mhm.
the first time. And then he immediately was like, "Oh, I like them. We should hang out with them more. Can they come over again? Or can we go do this again? Can we play this?" Paige
Wow.
had really bonded with him over Legos and Star Wars,
Yeah.
and Will had bonded over other video games and stuff like that. So he was immediately hooked on having them around. But
Mm.
then it became very hard because it was like, I feel like we're hiding who we are, and we're hiding ourselves, we're hiding our love. And when we're trying to hang out, it just feels like I'm not only lying to myself, but I didn't ever want to lie to my son.
Affection is not being shared and
Yeah.
just yeah, okay, yeah.
So that was so hard for us. And so it was pretty quickly that I wanted to sit him down and really ask him what he thought about them and how he felt about them spending more and more time with us.
Mm.
And then I let him know, I was like, we didn't mean for it to happen, but there is more than friendship here between all of us.
Mm.
There is actually a lot of love between all of us, where and then I asked him if he knew what it meant to be polyamorous, and he
Mm.
said no, which was funny because he had just had a vocab list that was all a bunch of poly words.
Oh,
And so I had actually taught him, like, maybe a month or two prior, what that word meant, but he did not remember, conveniently.
yeah.
But I just, I explained, it's like it's when you can have romantic feelings and romantic love for more than one person at a time. And he
Mm.
said, "Oh, okay, cool." He was like,
Yeah,
"No big deal."
yeah.
And I was like, "How would you feel if I told you that I was actually in love with both of them, and that they were both in love with me?" He said, "I think that's great. I'm so happy for you." And then his
What?
very next question was, "Does that mean eventually they can move in?" And I just said, with one way, I just said, "How would that make you feel?" And he said, "Can they move in tomorrow?"
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Well, it's gonna be a while, but
Yeah.
that would be our goal eventually." And
Wow.
I was like, "Now, not everyone's gonna always understand this type of relationship." He's like, "I don't care."
What?
And it's amazing, kids don't have the same built-in judgments that we've been taught our whole lives, or they only do if it has been taught, right?
Yeah.
And so his biggest concern was that he was seeing me happy, and that
Dang.
he liked spending time with them,
Wow.
and that they treated me well, and that he wanted them to be a part of our lives as much as I did.
Wow.
And that just made my freaking heart explode.
Yeah.
And I knew we were on the right path. And I said, "How are you going to feel, if your friends find out?" And he's like, "Well, I don't necessarily want to like tell them or anything, but
Yeah.
it's not a problem if they find out." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, cool. We'll take your lead on how you want to handle it when we are in front of your friends. If it's just Auntie Page or
Yeah.
my friends or whatever." And of course, we downplay affection in public settings,
Sure.
but he wants all of us there. He's never once said, "Can it just be you and Will?" No, he wants all of
Oh,
us there. Um,
wow.
and And that's been for school functions, sporting events, birthday parties, his own birthday party with his friends coming there, and he wants all of us participating.
Wow.
And so I really, really genuinely feel that we have his honest acceptance and love, and that come what may, I'm sure he might have evolving feelings over it as he, goes through puberty and his teenage
Sure.
years. And we'll take those in stride. We're always going to take his lead to make sure we don't put him in a vulnerable position with any of his friendships. Fortunately, though, my son has a wonderful knack of finding very like-minded friends.
That's great.
And I know that several of his friends' parents do know and are perfectly fine with it, very supportive, and don't bat an eyelash at it, and are just as happy for me too, because they know my past and what I've been through to get to this point, and they love seeing me happy too. So he's got a good picker. Maybe it's the strategy I taught him.
So, question. You have enlightened me and the audience quite a bit on the beauty and uniqueness of what's going right. Tell me what the unique challenges have been. Yeah. What are the unique challenges to this relationship?
Oh, there's plenty, but there's also very unique benefits too, which many I haven't even spoken on, like logistical benefits, economical benefits, efficiency benefits of like having 3 adults to help, share the load of everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, that some of the struggles that come up, we bicker just like any other relationship. And we have 3 distinct personalities to contend with.
Okay.
3 different communication styles. Some of us are incredibly similar in ways that are kind of the most difficult ways to be similar.
Sure.
Right? So it leads to Will and I, for example, we butt heads a lot because we are a lot alike in so that we're both ADHD and struggle with a lot of the same things. So when it comes to communication, we have to really work hard to be effective and kind communicators with each other. Paige is a very distinct personality in her own right, and I have strong similarities with her as well, but in totally different ways than how Will and I are similar. So navigating conflict is more layered, but conflict very rarely arises amongst all 3 of us.
Interesting.
It is usually 2 people getting in a tiff, and then the 3rd person comes in and gets one side of the story, gets another side of the story, and then says, "Okay, I'm piecing together what's going on here. Sounds like this is what's happening here, and you're right, but also this is happening over here, so you are also right. Where's the middle ground?" So it's like having built-in mediation to your relationship, which in a 2-person dynamic, when both people think that they're right, it's very hard to find that middle ground quickly. Somebody really has to bite the bullet and swallow their ego. Say, "Okay, I was wrong, but can you still see why I felt this way because of what you did?" Whereas when you have that 3rd person coming in and most importantly, they have that vested interest in everybody's emotions and well-being and the well-being of the throuple dynamic in general. So when one person is upset or 2 people is upset, I mean, the whole dynamic is completely thrown off. It has to be addressed very quickly and addressed in a way that we can actually resolve it and move on from it. I see so much in more of the heteronormative relationships in a 2-person dynamic. Even when conflict arises, it's very rarely addressed completely. Properly. So much gets swept under the rug. You get a lot of passive aggressive resentment going on.
No resolve, man.
Somebody might begrudgingly say sorry just because they know that they have to in order to move on, but nobody really lets go of what the issue was. And then you have this snowball effect of all the little things that you've let creep in and get undiagnosed and untreated within your relationship that slowly starts to separate you, and it starts to dilute the love that is
Mm,
at the core, right? And so that's how you have people that just drift apart, or people that just become roommates because they've learned to just coexist together, but they're not really happy together anymore. So the way that
yes.
we handle that conflict is we have to go through the ugly parts. We have to be willing to have hard conversations and have them quickly and
Yes.
efficiently and with kindness. And everybody's got to accept their dose of accountability or it doesn't work. But we find that we get
Interesting.
past these issues much faster than I think a normal couple does. And then we come out stronger because we have learned in a condensed time period.
Mhm.
We have learned probably 20 years of communication skills just within the context of our one relationship
I'm willing to
because we had
bet.
to.
A traditional couple, a two-person couple, yes, they get into their corners, and when one's energy is thrown off, over the years, the other person kinda gets numb to that too, and it's like, "I can't" whatever, and so you could spend weeks not talking, but in a triad or beyond, you have that other partner you go to who you didn't have the tiff with, but says, "Hey, babe, your energy's way off and we're not gonna proceed. I This is affecting us too.
Yeah,
How can I but there's no anger there at that person per se, or there's less anger, or
less
it's
anger
not
usually.
directed at them.
Yeah.
And their ability to reach out to you, because traditional one two people relationships, they most people live their marriage in hiding
Yeah.
from the
In a
public, from
state of
anyone
defense,
else.
you know?
So that is an interesting thought to entertain, that someone else could come along and say, "Hey, listen, I love you. I love Will. I love Paige, whatever it is. But let's talk. Like, what's going on? What happened?" And now you've got a process and you're like, shit. But it helps. That is wild to think about. Let me ask you this, and maybe we'll end with this question. What do you hope, now that you've gone through this whole new spectrum of sights, sounds, colors, emotions, what do you hope people take away from your relationship?
Oh, what a loaded question. I guess I would hope that if they didn't understand it before, that they see love and they see probably a more mature love than most people might even be able to comprehend or
Mm,
achieve. And that at the heart of that love and what should be the heart of any relationship in order to make it work long term for however long it's meant to last,
mhm,
communication is truly the answer to all things. You have to respect your partner enough to be able and willing to have hard conversations so that you can grow through challenges when they come your way. You have to love your partner enough to find a way for them to hear you and to really hear them.
mm,
And that you don't have to abandon a relationship just because you don't feel that it can serve you anymore, because there are so many other ways that a relationship can grow over time if you are willing to have those hard conversations. And that if we all loved each other enough to give the benefit of the doubt, to be willing to have those conversations and to grow through hard things together, what's waiting on the other side can be so much bigger than you can even imagine.
mm.
And it all comes down to communication.
I don't know why, but that hits me in the feels. That's bizarre. Maybe because we've seen so many relationships that could have succeeded, gone the distance by evolving, but they were given a binary option: live in misery
Yes.
or live with the stigma of being a, I don't know, divorcee. And here's my binary options from all of society for all of time, as opposed to, hey, why don't you have a few conversations
Yeah.
and then evolve together?
Evolve together. You can grow in different paths as long as they're still parallel. You can do it together.
It's
And
beautiful.
that doesn't mean I'm not advocating for somebody to say, "Oh, well, my marriage is in shambles. We should try an open relationship." Like,
Exactly.
it's not a quick fix. And if you don't have communication, it's not going to save anything. It's just going to make you implode faster.
Yeah.
It is not for everyone.
Yeah.
But if you still have love at the core for your partner,
Yeah.
and yet you are somehow not fulfilled and you don't know why, or maybe you do know why and you know what you need, but you're so afraid to say it because of how it might hurt them or because of what it might do to your family or your friend group or whatever, you are you're cutting yourself short.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there could be more.
Living with less love than you could.
Yeah,
And in fact, the inverse opposite. You're literally setting your life. If you don't, at least have these conversations.
yeah. What
If
do
you
you have to
don't,
lose if it's already on the line to lose it anyway?
so yeah, you're facing another 60 years of absolute misery, or sacrifice, and then it'll come around. Like maybe in 3 or 4 years we'll work this out, or we'll be happier, or you have these tough conversations and let yourself evolve, to actually experience the love you're looking for, which is all we're looking for.
All
You
we're looking
know,
for.
I cannot thank you enough. I did not think that I would get hit in the feels having this conversation, but something about it, I think, is well beyond threesomes, well beyond
Yeah.
sex. Something about this, I think, is quite freeing, at least in me. So thank you so much, Cam. Well, actually, don't thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for living this out. Everyone, listen, this is Grant Sparks, and I don't think I've been moved this much by one of my interviews. I've interviewed Olympians, I've interviewed business leaders, and something about this time with Cam has really rocked me, and you'll see a synthesis of this. Thank you to everyone who had questions on today. Follow Cam. She's blowing up on TikTok. She just passed 10,000 followers. I think when she and I first started speaking, she had 400. This topic is resonating with people. Check her out at Rev Dating. And then we didn't even get to this because it's so powerful, but their Fourth Wheel podcast is hilarious because you get to hear from all three of them. And then they bring a guest on who encountered them. The latest one is their real estate agent who encountered them. And he talks about the experience of beginning to understand slowly through their interaction of him selling their property, of they're a loving couple and his own unembellished testimony of their love together. So check it out. Check me out next time. Grant Sparks. Like, subscribe, follow. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a phenomenal day.